Hey everyone, in today's video I'm going to be showing you my LEGO Tinkaton MOC and giving a detailed look of the build, including its features, posability, and some of the building techniques used. If you're interested in building this yourself, you can check the link in the description below for both the parts file and instructions, which are now up on my store, and the proceeds just help to support this channel and future MOCs and builds. The total part count for this MOC is 584 pieces, and at the time of the recording of this video, its estimated cost around $70 to $80 Canadian. Please keep in mind this does not include shipping or handling, and your final cost may vary. I think out of all the Pokemon MOCs I've designed so far, Tinkaton was one of the most painful and difficult to design to date. I think this took about 2 to 3 weeks in total to design in Stud.io, and the build testing was a bit more rigorous since I wasn't too confident in some of the connection points. They ended up tweaking it some more once it was built to strengthen some of the connections and to cut down on some of the more expensive parts. But I'm not gonna lie, for its size, this was one of the more expensive MOCs to build to date. Although it might look pretty simple in some parts, it was a lot of trial and error to see what worked best. A lot of its features are also small, so there wasn't a lot of room to work with, and there were several compromises made to even get it to this scale. I don't think I was able to capture all of its details, but I tried to fit as many as I could. It also didn't help that the dark pink and bright light pink used for its body and its highlights don't have a large part catalog in LEGO, so that limited some of the building techniques that I could use as well. We'll take a closer look at the body and hammer separately, taking a closer look at the body first. Overall, the body itself isn't that big when compared to the rest of the build, and most of the mass here is from its hair. The sub-assemblies for the hair were probably one of the most challenging parts of this build, having gone through several techniques and iterations, and this was one of the main areas that I needed to strengthen when it was built. I knew one of the main details I wanted to capture was the bright pink highlights, which zigzag around the hair bundles or bunches, and connects up to the sides to the front bangs. Trying to capture the zigzag highlight was pretty difficult, and I relied heavily on sitting both these white and bright light pink cheese wedge slopes on top of each other, and this actually used a similar building technique that I used for my Garganacle or Garganical MOC, which was just posted onto my channel. I usually try and brick build everything and avoid prints and stickers when I can, so the hair bundles ended up looking pretty blocky at some angles, and they're pretty heavy as well. They're connected with mixo style ball joints, so you can't really pose them as the range of motion is limited. And even though they're quite heavy, I think it helps with the overall look since they tend to fall down and drag on the ground naturally. They also have these two hair strands or flaps at the ends, and they are just built with a few pieces and are connected with bars and clips, so you can change the angle of them if you wanted to. This flap, added with the weight of the hair bundles, actually help with the overall stability since it helps to counterbalance the weight of the hammer, which we'll see later in this video. Looking at the head and face again, you can see the highlight detail for the hair, and I would have liked the front bangs and some of the highlights to be a bit thinner, but there just wasn't enough pieces in bright light pink, and the pieces that were available were either very expensive or hard to source. At some point in the middle of the design, I played with not including the highlights in the front, but it felt like the face and hair looked too flat, so I settled on this design, which probably isn't the most clever or best building technique to use, but I think it gets the job done at least. The rest of the face is pretty plain, and you probably already noticed that there isn't a mouth here. That's one of my regrets with this design since I wanted to capture its jigsaw-like mouth in game, but I couldn't find a way to capture it in this scale. The rest of the head is just covered with the curved slopes and wedges, but I made sure to leave some room on the top to attach these two hair spikes, which also have a pink highlight and are angled as well. Taking a closer look at the rest of the body, the legs, arms, and torso are probably the simplest parts of this design, and the legs may be something I revisit in the future since I'm not too satisfied with their final look. The legs are just attached with clip and bar pieces, so you're only really able to have them splay in and out, and the range of motion is somewhat limited, but you can still have it standing and posed pretty easily. Taking a look at the torso, it's pretty plain, but it was a lot of work trying to get the general shaping down to this scale. With how it's connected to the head, both the head and body are built in together, so there isn't any neck articulation and the head is fixed. One of the other details that was annoying to capture was that around its waist, it actually has these small scrap pieces that drape on its sides. And I think I tried a few different techniques, but most of them meant redesigning the body, which meant I would need to redesign the head as well. So I opted to simplify that by just using two of these modified claw plate pieces in light bluish gray, which sort of imply that detail here, but ideally these would be facing out and angled down instead. Coming around to the back, there isn't that much detail here, but I just try to cover up the neck a bit to cover up some of the internal structure. And then the back of the head is covered off with these wedges just to add some volume as well. For the arms, I wanted to focus more on the articulation since I wasn't sure how I was going to tackle the hammer or how it could be handled. The arms themselves are pretty short and use this 2x4 curved slope piece for most of the shaping, and are attached onto mixo style ball joints so you can rotate them forward and back and side to side. But the hair does block the range of motion a bit. The white fingers can be opened and closed, however the thumb is fixed at this angle. I decided to only add articulation to the shoulders and fingers and not to include any wrist or elbow joints, since I didn't like the additional gaps it would have added, and when this was built physically, I saw that just the shoulder articulation was already enough to hold the hammer. There's definitely more posability options if additional joints were added, especially with wielding the hammer in different ways, but let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now taking a closer look at the hammer, I would say the design of this went a lot smoother than the body, but this was something I definitely had to build test to see if the handle could withstand the weight of the head. The handle mostly uses 2x2 round bricks for its shape, and there's also a couple of long Technic axles in the middle to help strengthen the connections. Due to its thickness, the hand and fingers aren't actually able to wrap around it, so I included these cheater pieces, which are done with these 1x2 Technic bricks, which allow it to attach to the hand just by static connections. Where the handle connects to the hammer, I also included the small loop detail, and I was just glad that this life preserver ring piece came in dark bluish gray, which I think matches perfectly with the in-game model. For the rest of the hammer, you can kind of see where the layers are, and they use a combination of arches, curved slopes, and round bricks to achieve that. I do wish that the hammer looked more spaced out or had some more empty space in between the layers, but due to the connections needed, it ended up looking more dense than how it does in-game, since at some angles you will be able to see into or through the hammer. The center hole detail in the middle was an area that I had to redesign when I was build testing this, since I realized some of the connections weren't possible physically, even though they looked fine in Stud.io. Just like the in-game design, the center shows what looks to be the handle that's supposed to continue throughout the head. However, for this build, I cheated a bit since there is a break in the handle subassembly. It's a bit hard to see here, but in the center hole, there is a 2x2 round brick and some 2x2 round plates in dark bluish gray, and I tried to align it with the placement of the handle just to give the illusion that it was continuous. However, there is a longer Technic axle that does connect through, which just helps connect the handle and helps strengthen some of the other internal connections. For the head of the hammer, one of the main challenges was getting to look like it was made of different pieces of scrap metal that were all layered and bent over each other, since it said in Tinkaton's lore that its line uses scrap metal to build both its hammer and its homes. I spent a lot of time looking at the official artwork and the models in-game to break down the elements of the hammer and to try and build it layer by layer, and overall I'm quite satisfied with how it turned out. But since it's in LEGO, it's not going to be 100% accurate, especially for the color, since I used the light bluish gray and dark bluish gray pieces here, whereas in game it looks like it has a warmer or slightly darker tint to it. Since I decided to use the light bluish and dark bluish gray colors in LEGO, I knew that I'll have a lot more pieces to pull from, so where I compromised a bit with the color, I tried to make up for it by getting its shaping and proportions to be as accurate as I could. The face of the hammer uses a technique I've used many times in the past to get this circular shape to it, but I've modified it a bit so that this darker layer looks like it wraps around one side and is offset by a little at the tops, so that this 2x2 round tile, which simulates that large nail, looks like it's pinning it down to the rest of the head. Behind the main face, you can see that it's centered with the smaller circular layers behind it, and these are all connected to the center with a Technic axle to reinforce that connection. Looking at the other side, the smaller face is much simpler, and it's just built with round bricks and plates, and it's finished off with round tiles for the face. Top of the hammer had a unique shape to the spike, and I went through a couple of different colors to see which techniques I could use, but settled on the tan color here since I thought it was a close enough match to the official artwork. I tried capturing the general shaping and its thinness by using some hinged pieces with these 1x1 double slopes attached onto brackets. If these double slopes are a bit too hard to source, then you can easily swap it out with the regular 1x1 cheese slope wedge instead. However, I personally like the look of these a bit more over that one. You should be careful with the subassembly since it is a bit fragile and it's only attached onto the hammer with a single clip towel at its base. Finally, for those of you wondering, this is how it looks scaled up to a random minifigure. And let me know down in the comments below your thoughts on this MOC, as well as any ideas that you want to see me build next, and I may just pick yours in a future video. I usually post all my MOCs and designs on my Instagram first, but let me know if you'd like to see any progress or update videos on this channel as well. I also have a bunch of other LEGO Pokemon MOCs uploaded onto my channel already, so feel free to check them out, and a couple of them will be shown on screen shortly. I think my goal right now is to reach 100 Pokemon MOCs, and so far I think I'm at 60 to 70 designed at stud.io, with roughly 50 of them built physically so far. So if you've been following from the start or are new to this channel, I hope you all will join me on this journey. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.